U.S. officials are scrambling to assess the authenticity of dozens of leaked military and intelligence documents, reportedly revealing highly classified information, including sensitive details on the war in Ukraine. It also appears to show the U.S. spying on some of its closest allies, including South Korea and Israel. Well, for more on this story, Professor John Blaxland joins us now. He's with the Strategic and Defense Studies Center, ANU College of Asia and the Pacific. Professor, this leak, it seems to indicate that the U.S. views adversaries the same way they view its allies, with some degree of mistrust. First off, what impact do you think this is going to have on America's relations with the nations that they call friends?
Thanks, Teresa. Look, I'm actually fairly relaxed about this. I don't see this as particularly controversial. Israel and South Korea know very well that the United States remains acutely interested in what happens internally to the politics and the militaries of their countries. The United States is hugely invested in making sure that it understands intimately well what's going on, because the United States has a stake in what happens there. So I think, and look, the players inside Israel and Korea know that very well. There may be some, in terms of fallout domestically and the politics of it, but essentially the practitioners know that this has pretty much been going on for a long, long time. But what is interesting is the fact that this has been put out there. This is an attempt, it appears, to deflect attention from Russian failings in Ukraine, perhaps to try and embarrass the United States, to try and wean off some allies from the United States and its support for Ukraine, perhaps also to undermine the plans that Ukraine has reportedly been making for an offensive against the Russians in eastern and southern Ukraine in the coming weeks and months. So all of that makes sense on one level. But of course, the other thing is that open source intelligence, or stuff garnered from the internet, is becoming more and more important to both sides in the conflict as a means of understanding the situation, but also in influencing the other side. So this is information and intelligence as a weapon, if you like. It's certainly very interesting to watch unfold.
So given these documents have laid bare how weak both Russia and Ukraine are, do you think it's going to impact the war in any way?
So it could impact the war a little bit. There's some possibility that the Ukrainians will be looking to modify their plans in light of the apparent breach of their security around the plans that they had. Deception and secrecy is fundamentally important. It's a very important arm of any kind of military campaign, particularly an offensive operation. So the question now is, how much does this affect and disrupt the planning of the Ukrainians? And how much does this perhaps undermine the resolve of other countries to continue backing Ukraine with supply of not only tanks and rocket systems, but the munitions that go with them? My sense is that there's a broad sense appreciation that this is something that Russia is keen to do, and that it is in the interests of the West, NATO countries, the United States and others, to not be deflected by this barbed criticism, this expose, or its embarrassing expose of American intelligence practices and of the revelations of Ukrainian plans, knowing that much of this was already pretty well understood by practitioners and insiders along the way.
One question is who, right? There are indications that these documents were leaked online by someone within the U.S. First, how likely is that? And what do you think their motivation would be if this was, in fact, an inside job?
So it's a good question, Teresa, because it looks like they were using a camera. So it reveals that there's some security measures that they weren't able to circumvent. So they weren't able to email it to themselves or take it out on a thumb drive, because those kind of security measures have been put in place to prevent that. So the good old-fashioned camera, perhaps on a phone, was what appears to have been used. That could have been by somebody working for Russia. It certainly appears to have been used by Russia, so maybe a spy working for Russia, or somebody who was selling the information happen, in the dark web. It's hard to know exactly at this stage from a distance. I'm sure there'll be a lot of investigations. What is pretty darn clear, though, is that Russia is seeking to exploit this, playing down its weaknesses, playing up Russia's weaknesses, and making out the United States to be the bad egg, the bad player, the not to be trusted player. And that comes at a time when the United States is obviously facing significant other challenges, not just domestically, but internationally in terms of managing the crisis in Taiwan and beyond.
And before we let you go, Professor, we know successful diplomacy all depends on trust. How common is this type of eavesdropping or spying behavior among other nations? Is it just that we don't hear about it often?
That's right, Teresa. In the espionage business, the secret of success is in keeping one's successes secret. One doesn't divulge how good one is. One doesn't reveal one's capabilities. So this is a little bit embarrassing from that point of view from the United States. But as I say, there is a sense that this is not that much more than what is available from very sophisticated open source intelligence reporting available that you can download and you can check on Twitter. It is embarrassing, though. And it will take a bit of a diplomatic fence mending to go with Korea, with Israel, and with Ukraine. Trust is critical in this business. We've seen a wave of shifting from lack of trust, where people keep information compartmented with the so-called need-to-know principle, keeping information in a stovepipe or compartmented. After 9/11, we went to this idea of need to share because of the demonstrated failings of being able to put the jigsaw pieces together in the lead up to the 9/11 attacks. And then, of course, we saw the Snowden effect when people then decided to clam up again. But Ukraine last year demonstrated the utility of opening up again and using intelligence as a weapon, as an information tool, if you like, to undermine the plans and the resolve of the adversary, in this case Russia. And of course, now we're seeing that being used against the United States back and against Ukraine as well. This is an ongoing game of tit for tat. It's not ending here. This is just the last chapter in a long-running saga.
Pleasure having you on the program, sir. Thank you very much. That was Professor John Blaxland from the Strategic and Defense Studies Center, ANU College of Asia and the Pacific.